This video is a response to those who are questioning why I was released from the High Council yesterday. So it was an early release. Usually High Council calling lasts at least 5 years, at least at my stake. And so there was some surprise for myself and for others who have been kind of asking about my release. And so I'm very happy to go to lunch with anybody, to talk on the phone, to, if you want to email me, talk in person, whatever. I'd love to talk to you in person about this. But for those who can't, I'm sending a video so that you can understand what happened, why I was released, and anyway, here's the juicy details. So this, you have to go back at least, 3 years or maybe more. I'll rewind a little bit and then we'll come up to today. So back in the day, my wife and I were looking for some place to put humanitarian donations. And we noticed that a lot of organizations out there that take humanitarian donations, it turns out that they don't do with your money that which you think they're doing with your money. So we were looking around for a place to put our humanitarian donations, and finally decided, you know what, we can't trust anybody. Let's give money every month to the humanitarian fund of the church, and at least we know that those funds will be distributed as we believe in a good way. So every month we were giving a significant donation to the humanitarian fund of the church. After some years, I started seeing that the church was partnering with the United Nations and with UNICEF, and that the humanitarian donations were being given to, for example, UNICEF, which greatly upset me. For those of you who aren't as old as I am, there was a day when Elder Benson and then President Benson talked very forcefully about the United Nations, and how that the United Nations was part of the secret combinations that are talked about in the Book of Mormon. And those secret combinations you can read about in Ether chapter 8, verse probably 24, right around there, where it says that there would be secret combinations in our day and we'd awake to our awful situation, and that those secret combinations were for the purpose of the destruction of all nations. So I've spent plenty of time studying that myself and understand it. And so I was disturbed when the church was giving humanitarian donations to an arm of the United Nations. So we immediately stopped giving funds to, or offerings through the humanitarian fund of the church, and looked around for other places to give donations. We found some good ones and started giving there. Then, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I found out that the tithing that's given to the poor and the needy was also being given to UNICEF. For example, a year ago in conference, President Oaks gave a talk, and he talked about a significant amount of donations that had been given, and he talked a lot about it, and then he talked about how they had partnered with UNICEF for that. And very strange to see that. But then as I continued my study, I found out that less than 1% of our tithing is actually given to the poor and the needy. And that might not surprise anybody, or maybe nobody cares. But if you go back and look at the origins of tithing in the Old Testament, go read the JST, you'd have to look in the appendix of your scriptures, JST Genesis 14, and it says that Abraham paid tithes of all that he had to Melchizedek for the poor. So the origins of tithing were for the poor. Then we have, for example, in Malachi, where it says, bring ye all the tithes in the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And he's talking about for the poor and the needy and for those who need it. And he condemns the priests for not distributing the sacred funds properly. Also, and every time I go through the Old Testament, which is once a year, I notice that God, when he says he's going to destroy Israel, he talks about, of course, they're worshiping idols, but he talks about that they aren't keeping their Sabbaths, and he says that you are robbing the poor and the needy. And so that is of utmost importance to God, that we are taking care of the poor and the needy. And so that became very concerning to me because I really do care about where my tithing funds are going and would like those to be helping those who are poor and needy. You'd say, okay, what about your fast offerings? That's great, and I'm happy to help people in my ward and my stake, but my fast offerings don't really go much outside of my ward or stake. They'll pay the rent or whatever for my neighbor, which I'm happy to help with. But my fast offerings would be much better served if they were going to Zimbabwe or somewhere where we actually have people who are not extremely rich like we are in the United States, but they're going to the poor and the needy. And whereas tithing is intended mostly to help the poor and the needy, and secondarily for the church, I was concerned with that. So that had been weighing on my heart, and a year and a half ago, I was driving up Logan Canyon. I was by myself, and it was early spring, and I decided to pull over. There's an offshoot of Logan Canyon called Temple Fork, and the gate was closed because it was still early spring, still snow around, and I just decided to walk up that hill and spent some time pondering, and got up there. There's this beautiful little pond there with at the time there was a beaver in the pond, and just spent some time there in nature and pondering, and my heart just opened up, and I felt that I could ask God some questions at that time, and I told him basically what I've just told you here, and asked the Lord, what do I do with my tithing? Should I keep paying to the church, or what's what would you have me do? And at that time, I got one of the most direct revelations that I've ever received, and I wrote it down, and I'm not going to quote it directly, but the Lord told me that I am responsible for the disbursement of my offerings, which seems rather obvious, right? I'm responsible for it. And he said, if you'd like to give that to the church, that is fine. He said, as long as you can do it with integrity of heart. Now, I thought about that for about 2 seconds, and I thought, I can't do this with integrity. I can't pay tithing to the church with integrity because it's not going where I believe that those funds need to go. So, as I was at a crossroads, I took that to my wife. We discussed it, and we began to take our tithing and to give it to the poor and the needy directly, and to organizations that were directly helping the poor and the needy and causes that we thought were good. So fast forward to a couple months ago, September 2023, my ward sent out an email saying, hey, schedule a time for your tithing declaration. And I thought to myself, you need to go in and tell the bishop exactly where your tithing's going. So, and by the way, I don't feel the least bit bad about this or guilty. So I went in and chatted with the bishop for a few minutes, and then he said, so tithing, are you full tithe payer? And I said, well, I'm either 20%, meaning about double, or zero, depending on how you look at it. And so he said, okay. And so I told him everything that I just told you, and said, I feel like the Lord has has guided me, and I have felt at peace this entire time about doing this. And he told me, well, he said, I actually really commend you for praying about this and receiving directions from the Lord. And he said, I have no idea what to put down for your tithing status. And I said, well, that's you do whatever you want to. I said, I feel really good about it. And he said, well, I'll take it to the stake president. So I said, okay, great. Happy to talk to him if he wants to. So a little over a month went by, and I got an email from the stake executive secretary asking if my wife and I could meet with the stake president on a Tuesday night. So I went home to my wife and I said, I'm getting released. It's pretty obvious. When your wife's called in with you, you're getting released. So we went in and had a nice chit chat with my stake president, who's been my neighbor for 26 years or so. And he said, well, I'd like to extend a release from your calling. Thank you for all your service at Mutual Dell and in the stake. For all these years, I've served as a stake clerk, served in the High Council, served in mission prep, so I've had stake callings for quite a long time now. And so he said, thank you. I said, okay, you're welcome. And he said, well, your bishop told me about your tithing discussion. So obviously that these two things are very linked and related. So I said, yeah. I said, did he tell you the reason? And he said, yeah. I said, well, let me tell you just in case you missed anything there. And so I went back over the whole thing that I just explained here on the video. And I again told him, I said, I am completely at peace and feel very good. And I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to with this. And he said, okay. He said, that's good to know, because I was wondering if I should take your temple recommend away. So I said, it's up to you. And I reiterated, I said, I feel very much at peace about this. We both do, me and my wife. So that was the end of that conversation, and I was extended a release from that, and that release went through yesterday. So I've had a lot of questions from people about why I'm being released, some direct, some indirect, and now you directly know why I've been released from my calling. And it's been a good run, and I feel like I put my whole heart and my soul into my calling at Mutual Dell, which is a girls' camp up American Fork Canyon with senior missionaries, 8 couples up there that I've been directing for the last year or two, and also with my other responsibilities in the High Council. I have put my heart and soul into that, and I've left nothing on the table. So I feel good about that. I also feel good about being released at this time. So let's go into a little bit of doctrinal questions here. And by the way, if you want to comment on this video, feel free to leave a comment here, or email me, or call me and talk to me, or whatever, and we can talk this through for good or for bad. So back in the time of the Law of Moses, you might remember that there were prescribed offerings for sin offerings. There was an atonement offering. There was a scapegoat. There were all kinds of prescribed offerings. If you had a boy child, there was a prescribed offering for that. And there was a time and a place for that, and those were given to the priests, the prescribed offering. And if you were poor, that would be maybe a turtle dove. If you were not poor, that would be maybe a sheep without blemish. So you knew exactly what the Lord was asking you to do under the Law of Moses. In 3 Nephi chapter 9, verses 19 and 20, the Lord said that we should no longer give sacrifices of the blood of animals, but He said for an offering we should give as an offering our broken heart and a contrite spirit. And in return, He said, I will baptize you with fire and with the Holy Ghost. It has changed from prescribed offerings to an offering of our heart. And for me, the direction that I have gone has been an offering from my heart. And it's been very instructive to talk to the Lord about this and to do what I feel is right directly with the Lord. Now, I don't expect anyone else to follow my direction. I don't expect that the revelation I got from me was a revelation from anybody else, and I think it's up to everybody to determine what offerings the Lord is asking for you to give and how those offerings need to go. And if that's to the church, that's great. But I wanted to put this video out for those, especially who I've worked with on the High Council, in my stake, my ward, those at Neutral Dell, the missionaries there who I have just absolutely loved working with in the last couple years. And God bless everybody in their own journey. It's all a journey that requires our heart, and I'd appreciate if anybody wants to talk this over. I'd love to talk to you. Let's go to lunch. Let's talk on the phone. Send me an email. We'll talk.